Hello everyone. So yes, my name is Robert Haynes. I'm the Director of Operations of a nonprofit organization called Earthquest. Here at Earthquest, we are a wildlife education sanctuary. We take in birds of prey that cannot be released back out into the wild and utilize them for educational programs to teach people about wildlife. I've got some really awesome birds for you guys to see here today. I'm sure most of you guys have probably seen me here before. So I did bring a little big finale at the end if you guys want to bear through this little bit of soggy weather with us. I think it'll be totally worth your while. To get us started off today, we are going to be bringing out a hawk. His name is Rusty. Rusty is from down in Georgia. He was actually found in a suburban backyard, kind of like this kind of area. And his nest tree actually fell over in a storm. And he was the only chick that survived from the nest falling out. And so he was raised by a nice lady that found him in her backyard, and she was doing her best to help get him back into the wild. Sorry about that. You guys didn't see nothing there. I don't know what you're talking about. You weren't paying any attention to that. Now, he is what's called a red-tailed hawk. If you guys take a look at the eyes on this red-tailed hawk, they are predators, meaning that they eat meat. They do not eat their vegetables, and they have several adaptations that allow them to hunt and survive in the wild. If you look at the eyes on this hawk, the eyes on a bird of prey are about 4 to 6 times more powerful than our own eyesight, meaning that when he's circling high above, he can see his prey from over a mile away. Just to give you guys an appreciation for how powerful the eyes are on this bird, if you had the eyes of a hawk and were standing on top of a 20-story building, you would be able to look down at the sidewalk and see the individual legs on an ant. Birds of prey are also able to see in color. This hawk right here can actually see a wider range of colors than we can. As a matter of fact, he can see the ultraviolet spectrum as well, which allows him to hunt in extremely low light conditions. Now, once he has spotted his prey, he's going to use the weapons of birds of prey, which are those incredibly powerful feet. The feet on a hawk like this are able to squeeze about 250 to 300 pounds per square inch. And on the end of his toes, he has these claws that are called talons. These talons are not razor sharp like a knife. They're needle sharp like a sewing needle designed to grasp and to hold the prey. Once he's caught his prey, he's going to use this hooked and curved beak as his knife and fork. That beak is designed for ripping and tearing and helps him get through the hide of the animal that he just caught and rip the meat into more smaller bite-sized pieces that he can then swallow. Now, red-tailed hawks, they are very common birds to find around these parts. These guys are actually one of the most successful birds of prey in the United States. You can find these birds living from the East Coast to the West Coast, from the north to the south, to even the middle of a city park. They have a very wide diet, and that helps them live in almost any climate that the U.S. seems to throw at them. We like to tease that red-tailed hawks have what we call a seafood diet. I don't know about you guys, I have a seafood diet. That's where you see food and you eat it pretty much regardless of what it is. And so red-tailed hawks can take any kind of prey, from a squirrel to a mouse to a rat to even a rattlesnake and everything in between. These guys are known as the farmer's friend because a family of red-tailed hawks living on your property can eat up to 1,200 rodents off your property in a single year. So these guys are really great to have around. We're going to go ahead and move on to our next bird while everyone gets their umbrellas out as Mother Nature rains on us, on all of our fun. All right, Rusty. Man, I wish I had a job like the weatherman where I can get my predictions wrong every single day and somehow still have a job. Now, hawks are what we call diurnal birds of prey. Just means that they are primarily awake and hunting during the daytime. So if hawks are diurnal, do you guys know what the opposite of diurnal would be? Nocturnal, exactly. What kind of birds of prey are nocturnal? Who? Who? What does the owl say? Whoo! Well, I think you guys are going to like this owl. We got to give him a little chance here. He's pretty sleepy. He was up super late last night. When we got back from another program, he decided to go out on a little excursion, and we actually had to go out and look for him. Guess where we found him? At a hootenanny. Oh, tough crowd. I thought you guys would like foul humor. Don't egg me on. Well, this is One-Eyed Willie. I'll give you 3 guesses, and the first 2 don't count, why we named him that. So One-Eyed Willie here, he was born down in the city of Atlanta, and he was actually found in a city park on the side of the road. he had actually been kicked out of his nest by his mama and was found by some people that were driving along that noticed that there was this little baby owl on the ground, and he looked like he was lost. And so they picked him up and they were going to put him back up into the nest, but that's when they looked and they realized that there was something going on with his left eye. In the middle of his left eye, he had this really bright white spot in the center of his eye, and they thought that doesn't look right. And so they called up their local wildlife rehabilitator and brought little Willie into them to see if they could help out. And what they found was that in Willie's left eye, he had a very, very, very large cataract taking up about 50% of his eye. And so because of that, what happened was when Willie first opened his eyes and his mama saw that there was something wrong with it, she picked him up and booted him out of the nest and evicted him. Because in the world of birds of prey, they have it really tough out there, even for completely healthy birds. Let's say just in this area, just for easy math, we have 100 owls born in the springtime during the breeding season, right? By the time that those birds reach their first birthday, there's only gonna be about 20 of them left. And that is for completely healthy birds. So you can imagine that with him having issues with his eye, that he really wouldn't have had a chance to survive at all. And so that's why mama throws him out of the nest as soon as possible, because she knows that giving him any extra food is a complete waste of time, and that would be better served giving it to his siblings and increasing their chance of survival. Now he is what's called a barred owl. Barred owls are one of the most common owls to find in your backyard in areas like this. They are really easy to identify because they're really, really noisy. I'm sure some of you have probably heard barred owls in your backyard. They sound like they're saying the words, "Who cooks for you? Who cooks for you all?" So it sounds something like, "Whoo, whoo, 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 whoo." I'm waiting for one of these days where he actually responds back to me, but I haven't had it happen yet. You see, Willie, he actually just learned how to hoot last year, and he loves to hoot in the evenings because he's apparently got a really good singing voice, because in just a few weeks of him learning how to hoot, he actually found a girlfriend. And he has a wild female barred owl that comes in, and during the breeding season, she sits on top of his enclosure at night, and they hoot back and forth with each other. And so because of this kind of forbidden love relationship that they have built, we have dubbed them at home Romeo and Juliet. Because they can unfortunately never meet, but they get to enjoy each other's company every evening, which is pretty cool to hear. Hearing them in the backyard definitely makes the hair on the back of your neck stand straight up. Now, typical of owls, he's going to be hunting at night. If you take a look at his eye, the eyes on an owl are about twice as big as human eyes, and they allow him to take in about 10 times as much light as you and I, meaning that even the darkest of nights are more than enough light for this owl to see. But even when he cannot see his prey, he can still find his prey, and that's because owls have one more highly developed sense, which is their sense of hearing. The hearing on an owl actually comes from this big rounded area on either side of his eyes that make up his ears. They're covered in these special sound-sensitive feathers, but if you were to pull back those feathers and look at his ear canal, the first thing you would notice is that his ears are absolutely massive. His ears are so big, you would be able to fit an entire quarter inside of his ear. The ears on an owl are also asymmetrically placed on their head, and that means that one of his ears actually points up and one ear points down. And that helps him triangulate his prey from a distance so that he can better identify exactly where that prey is hiding. Barred owls love to live around residential areas, especially ones that have a lake or a stream or a creek going through it, because one of the favorite foods for these guys to eat are frogs. They absolutely love to eat frogs and all the other creatures that like to live around sources of water. As a matter of fact, one of the really favorite snacks, if they can happen to find a lot of them, is they love to eat crayfish. And there was a really funny story about a barred owl that was found that had a certain flavor for crayfish. He absolutely loved them. And he was found, he had gotten a minor injury from getting hit by a car. He was brought into a local rehab center down, it's actually towards the Roanoke area. And when they were doing their exam on this owl, as they opened up his wings underneath of them, all these feathers were bright pink. Because just like flamingos, since he was eating so many crayfish, so many crustaceans, it had actually turned his feathers pink, just like a flamingo. Isn't that cool? Now, one thing I'd love to show you about the feathers on an owl is we're actually going to have Willie fly up to this perch. Owls, see, they like to sneak up on their prey, and so their feathers are a little bit different from the hawk, and they're able to flap their wings completely silently. So in a second here, I'm going to have everyone go quieter than a mouse for a second, and we're going to let Willie fly up onto his perch. And then I want you guys to listen to how quiet he is. Just imagine if you were sitting on your porch at night and think if you would even notice if he flew right over top of your head. Weep! Weep! He said, there's a big scary hawk coming in. We've got a Cooper's hawk coming in. Hello, Mr. Cooper's hawk. You cannot eat Mr. Willie. Elizabeth would be very angry at you if you tried to eat Mr. Willie. All right, Mr. Willie, I think it's time for you to go back to bed, and we can get on to our next birdie before you get eaten by Mr. Cooper's hawk. Ta-da! All right. This birdie is a special one to me. She's definitely, I hate to be biased, but she's one of my favorite ones to work with. Does anyone know what the world's fastest living creature is? Did I just hear someone say a cheetah? I don't know if you guys realize this, but this is a bird show, and the last time I checked, cheetahs don't have wings. Ha ha ha. So this is Rachel, and Rachel is one of the world's fastest living creatures, and she is what's called a peregrine falcon. You see, everyone thinks the cheetah is the fastest, but the cheetahs are the fastest land animal. The fastest animal on the planet is the peregrine falcon. When these guys go out to hunt, they go up to an altitude of about 1,500 feet, and they are known as the duck hawk. When they see a duck that they have decided is going to become dinner, they fold in those angled wings and they dive headfirst at a top speed of 240 miles an hour. At the very last second, they'll take these gigantic feet that they got, ball them up into a fist, and punch their prey right out of the sky, turning them into a big poof of feathers. Now this falcon here, she came to us from a rehabilitation center down in Chesapeake, Virginia. She was born on the Coleman Bridge down there. And what happened with poor Rachel here is she was actually a healthy chick in the nest. There was nothing wrong with her, but she slipped and fell out of her nest. You see, falcons, they like to nest on the cliff sides of large mountains, and they also like to nest on the sides of large buildings and bridges. And so her parents had nested on the top structure of this bridge, and she slipped and fell at about 2 weeks old and hit the roadway and broke her leg internally. And so she was taken into a rehabilitation center, and when they took her in to get an x-ray done, Rachel was really scared. She was freaking out. And she wanted nothing to do with all these scary people holding her down on an x-ray table trying to take a picture of her leg. And so unfortunately, Rachel actually went into cardiac arrest. And she basically died right there on that x-ray table. And the veterinarians did everything they could to bring her back, and they were able to restart her heart, but they did not have the capability of getting the pictures of her leg that they needed because they were too busy trying to settle down her heart. And so unfortunately, because of that, Rachel was deemed non-releasable because we don't know to what extent her leg was damaged because of that. And you can imagine if she was to fly out and hit a duck at 240 miles an hour now, she might re-injure that leg and probably wouldn't survive. Are you going to come up and hold the falcon for me? Or you want to fly to my other arm? Or do you want to do a hunting demonstration and run across? I'm just teasing. Now, peregrine falcons, they are a really special species to me. We are very fortunate to even have a peregrine falcon here for you guys today to show you and teach you about these birds, because we as a society, we failed these birds a couple decades ago. We almost lost the peregrine falcons here in the United States. They almost went extinct. Back in the early 1950s and 60s, bird watching groups around the country started reporting that they were seeing very few peregrines coming out of the nests during that breeding season. And something was going on in nature. Their nests were failing left and right. Eggs were not hatching, and there was no babies being born. And so the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service came to the rescue, and they put their top biologist up to the task, and her name was Rachel Carson. Rachel Carson started doing some studies, and one of the things she did was they just went up into the nest and they looked at the eggs that they were finding in there. And what they found was there was something going on with the eggs themselves. The eggshells were so thin that just the weight of mama bird sitting on top of the egg was causing it to crack. And so they had some blood samples taken from wild peregrines and wild bald eagles that were also having the same issues. And what they found was inside their bodies there was a common denominator, and that was a chemical that was made by man called DDT. DDT was an insecticide that was used as a way to kill mosquitoes to prevent the spread of malaria. And we sprayed this stuff on a scale that nowadays would be seen as truly preposterous. Across the country, they would spray hundreds of thousands of acres from a crop duster, indiscriminately killing all different types of animals, including most insects, trying to kill off these different animals that we called pests. And what was happening was it was concentrating in the environment, going up the food chain and stopping with our peregrines and with our bald eagles. Basically, to make it really short and simple to understand, we would spray it from a crop duster. Those little bit of chemicals would get into the bugs. It would kill most of the bugs, but some of the bugs wouldn't get eaten, and they would get eaten by a little bird, and that little bird would get eaten by a peregrine falcon. And so this chemical was concentrating inside of their bodies and making it so that they were impossible to lay eggs that were thick enough to be able to hatch out any young. And so Rachel Carson wanted to do something about this, and so she wrote a book that was called The Silent Spring. The Silent Spring raised awareness about poisoning the environment through the use of these kinds of chemicals and why we need to take care of our native wildlife so our native wildlife can take care of us. And with the effort that Rachel Carson put into making this book, it led to the banning of DDT in the early 1970s. And with captive breeding programs releasing baby peregrine falcons back into the wild, they were able to bring these birds back from the brink of extinction. I think it's proof that we can right our wrongs, but also proof to show exactly how fragile nature really is. Now we're going to go ahead and put Rachel up, and I've got one more bird for you guys to see today that I think you guys should enjoy. This is our big finale bird, pun intended. You ready, Rachel? Now this bird has actually been a part of Earthquest for longer than I have. She's actually been around doing programs with us for the last 25 years, but she is very new to being presented by anyone other than my mentor, Steve. Storm has recently come up to us here at our Virginia location, and over the last couple weeks we have been learning each other and doing programs together, and we have had quite a lot of fun, so I'm really excited to share this bird with you. This bird here was actually instrumental in helping save a species that comes from this country. This is Storm, and she's what's called our Andean condor, and they are the world's largest flying bird. Hi, Storm. Good morning. You see, back around the same time as the peregrines and the bald eagles were going extinct, another bird here in the U.S. was also going extinct, and that was called the California condor. And what was happening was the California condor, they were getting killed off by lead poisoning. Basically, when big game hunters were going out and going hunting, and they would shoot an animal, when they would field dress their kill, the little bit of remnants that was coming out from the bullet was being left in the gut pile, and the California condors were following hunters out there trying to basically steal that little bit of guts, and that was getting into their bodies and killing them. Lead is one of the most toxic things to any bird there is. You only need about 50 micrograms of lead to kill off a bird like Storm. Just for reference, 50 micrograms would be a piece of lead about the size of a single fleck of pepper from a pepper shaker. Can you imagine? Now, they wanted to capture the condors and breed them in captivity to save these birds from extinction, just like we were doing with the peregrines. But we didn't really know much about the California condors. We knew nothing about their nesting habits. And so when it went to public comment and was waiting for public approval, it got denied because we didn't know anything about these birds. And so what they did was they took Andean condors like Storm here, and they bred them in captivity so that we could learn all about them and then use those same methods to breed the California condor. What they found was by breeding Andean condors, they are very, very slow at reproduction. They only lay one egg every 2 years. And they take about 8 years to get to full maturity to even begin to lay eggs themselves. And so saving the California condor was going to be extremely difficult. And so after learning all this, and they captured the remaining birds, once they actually got out there, they were only able to find 22 California condors alive on planet Earth. And so with these breeding programs, they've been releasing the babies back out into the wild for the last several decades. And there is now over 1,000 California condors in the wild here in the United States. And they've actually been able to start new colonies of California condors. And you can now actually find the condors in the Grand Canyon, which is pretty cool. I've had friends of mine that have been out to the Grand Canyon, and they'll send me a video, and they're standing there taking a video over the canyon, and all of a sudden out of nowhere, it's like a storm cloud comes out of nowhere, and this condor comes up on an updraft and flies just a few feet above their head. Now, being vultures, condors and vultures, they are so instrumental to our environment, helping keep us safe. You see, the stomach acid that Storm has in her belly is so acidic, it is actually about twice as acidic as battery acid. And this helps them kill off diseases that they might find out in the wild, helping to keep us safe. By eating these diseases, they can remove them from the environment and keep it from spreading from other less efficient scavengers. She can actually eat something that was infected with diseases like anthrax, botulism, distemper, rabies, and even smallpox and Ebola. And the vultures and the condors basically serve as nature's white blood cell, helping keep us safe. And so it's very important that we take care of our birds so that they can take care of us. Now, Storm here, she was born at the St. Louis Wild Animal Park back in 1997. And when it came time for her egg to hatch, she missed her due date. She actually had to be dremeled out of the top of the egg and physically removed by the biologist. And she was so weak and so limp that she couldn't even hold up her head. And they had to open up her mouth and put one little piece of meat in her mouth every hour. And as the hours turned into weeks and the weeks turned into days and months, she got stronger and stronger and stronger. And when they tried to put her in with the other condors, she had spent too much time with the biologists, too much time with the humans. And so she didn't like other condors. She thinks she's one of us. She actually thinks my mentor, Steve, is her boyfriend. And so right now, she's not really sure why I'm messing with her. And so we're hopefully going to be able to retrain Storm and make her think that I'm her boyfriend so that she won't try and eat me all the time. Because I'm not dead. See, I'm still alive. You can't eat me yet. Now, when Storm opens up her wings here, she has a wingspan of about 10.5 feet. I'm going to see if she'll want to step up on my glove here. You want to bite me? Oh, thank you. That was very nice. You want to step up? Ta-da! Good job, baby girl. Okay. I know you want to eat me. I really want to thank all you guys coming out today and learning about the birds with us and hanging out with us. If you guys have any questions, I'd be happy to take a couple questions. I'm so glad that the rain wasn't too much, but I really want to thank you guys for coming out. If you guys want to help support the birds, somewhere hiding over here, I'll have Elizabeth grab it. We have a donation box, and that donations help us feed these animals their best diet that we can so that we can keep doing these kinds of programs and bringing these around to teach all these people and all these kids about the wild animals that live in our backyards. But does anyone have any questions while we're wrapping up here about Storm or any of the other birds? That's a great question. So they asked why the peregrine falcon had that thing on her head. That is called a hood. And basically what the hood does is it just blocks out all the light coming into their eyes, because peregrine falcons are kind of like the greyhound or the thoroughbred racehorse of the bird world. And so by blocking out all of her vision, it helps keep her nice and calm so that she doesn't get too overly stressed while she's still in training. How small when she was a baby? She was only about probably yay big when she was a baby. She was real teeny. They lay pretty big eggs. They're about that big, but she was probably about that big for the most part. Anyone have any other questions? So right now she is 25 years old, and the life expectancy for condors in captivity is about 70. Yep, so she has got a very long life ahead of her, and so we get to grow old together. In the wild, she would be approaching her life expectancy in the wild for the most part. Red-tailed hawks, they hunt in pairs for the most part, usually their mate, and then will hunt together and stuff like that. And they'll also hunt sometimes with their young as well to help teach them how to catch prey. Birds of prey, they're very maternal, and they very much help teach their young how to catch prey. So like not as much with the red-tails, but with the peregrines, there was a really interesting example I saw. I follow this videographer out in California. He documented this really cool thing. What happened was there was a female peregrine, and she had some young. She had 3 or 4 babies, and they were already fledged. They were already flying. They were already learning how to hunt themselves. Do a little hula dance for us. And she was trying to teach them how to grab a dove. And so she had actually went out, grabbed a dove, but she didn't kill it. She just grabbed it. And she was holding it in her feet. And normally what they would do when the babies are first learning how to fly and stuff like that is mom will come in with food, or dad will come in with food, and the babies will actually come in from underneath of mom, flip upside down, and pull it out of her feet and take it like that. But mom wanted to give her some practice on how to catch the dove herself. And so what she did was, as soon as the baby inverted and went to take the dove out of her feet, mama dived below her and let the dove go. And the dove is trying to beeline for the ground to get somewhere that it can hide from the baby. And so the baby actually had to fold in its wings and learn how to stoop and grab that dove. But what was really cool was the baby missed it, and mom would come down and grab it. And in the video, she did it 3 times, setting the baby up, learning how to catch the dove until it finally caught it. It was pretty cool. Anyone have any other questions? They can be very fragile. So they basically, they use their leg like a shock absorber. They hit it not with stiff joints, but obviously with slightly bent joints, trying to absorb some of that shock. But their bodies are absolutely amazing. Like, you know what a G-force is when like you're moving your inertia? Typical fighter pilots will even pass out at about 9 Gs of force, but peregrine falcons are known to hit up to 25 Gs in some of their turns when they're attacking prey. It's pretty amazing. So that means that 2-pound falcon weighs 50 pounds when it's in that turn, compressing her body like that. It's pretty amazing. So condors, they don't actually build a nest as we know of the term, like where they put sticks together and stuff like that, like you see birds in your backyard doing. So some birds, they build what we call an eyrie. And an eyrie is basically just a flat area in the dirt or in the sand, or even just on top of a rock, just somewhere that the eggs won't roll away. Condors usually prefer some kind of soil, whether it be dirt or sand, and they'll just lay it right like that. So they don't add anything to the nest. Usually they'll just find an outcropping on the side of a cliff or in a cave, and they'll just lay their eggs right there on the dirt. She says, I love you all this much. Anyone have any other questions? So Andean condors are native to the Andes Mountains of South America. So they live along the western coast of South America and in the mountain ranges, hunting or scavenging for anything that they can find. And then they'll also go up and down the coastline looking for marine life that would be washing up on the shore as well. I have a feeling that she just likes to do it because she likes to show off. But in the wild, condors will sit there, condors and vultures. A lot of times they'll sit, and when they fully extend her wings and she just holds them while she's standing out like that, we call this the horolatic pose. And what she is doing, obviously not right now, but they let the UV light from the sun hit their feathers, and it burns off any kind of bacteria that might be on the outside of her feathers. So that's why when you're driving around and you see vultures up in a tree or on a fence or on the ground, they'll all sit like this. They're all just basically taking a sun bath, burning off the bacteria on their feathers. Yep. And trying to look big and bad so they can eat Bobby, right? Right, Stormy? Alrighty, guys. Well, I think we're going to get Storm packed up here, and we're going to get ready to hit the road. But thank you guys so much for coming out. I'm so glad the weather hung in there for us. You going to chase me down all the way over here? Are you ready to go up? See, this is where Storm shows her intelligence. This bird is probably more intelligent than me and the other birds combined. A lot of times she knows the script that we follow when we do programs, and usually when we come to the tail end of that, that's when she starts misbehaving, because she's like, no, I want to hang out with all the people. All right. You ready? Let's go. Back in your box. Got to fold in those sails. Oop, watch your toe. It's kind of like folding up a tent. So at home, she lives in a big aviary at home. It's I think it's 32 feet by 42 feet. And then there's some other square footage of some little shelters for her to get in and out of the weather. So I think it sits total at about 1,600, 1,700 square feet. So yeah, she's got a pretty big enclosure. It's like the size of a house. It's pretty insane. But yeah, all of our birds live in outdoor aviaries that they fly around during the daytime. So the only time they're really tethered like this is when we're out actually presenting. So thank you guys so much for coming out. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you have any other questions, we'll be here for a little bit while we're packing up. You guys have a wonderful day.